You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we are going to dive into X ads. Man, this is a new space, as I'm following the trends as a whole, as traditional paid search and social, I don't know if they kind of start to shake themselves out and people are looking for new avenues. Different ones are randomly popping up. And when a really cool one, in this case, ads on X, I thought, wow, this could be really cool. So have a friend recommended within the network who is an expert in the space and was doing it for a little while, has had some results. And it was, Chris and I were talking. It was basically like, hey, can we do a quick podcast on this? Can we dive into a little bit and maybe open up, the conversation around the potential benefits, return on ad spend, all these different things that can happen on the platform. So Chris Orzechowski from West Egg. Chris, do you want to jump in with a background, on yourself, agency, what you do as a whole? Because I think you have your hands in a few different really cool things. But yeah, would love you to jump in, just hear a little bit of the background, your story, and then, West Egg.
Yeah, so I started off in this in the world of business as a freelance copywriter, and this is about 11 years ago, and started working with a lot of clients, mostly doing email marketing stuff for them, all different e-commerce brands, digital product brands, some software companies, every now and again, some brick and mortar, physical services companies, things like that. And spent most of my career doing email marketing. I have my own business where I also sell, programs and digital courses and books, and also use it as a way to attract clients in my business, and had done a lot of Facebook ads and things over the years. I had this weird issue happen with Facebook where I got locked out of my account. I didn't do anything bad, but I got locked out of my old account because I didn't transfer my two-factor authentication code from my old phone to my new phone. Couldn't get into it, so I started a new account because I wanted to run some new ad campaigns. Facebook was like giving me issues, and it was only spending like $2 at a time. Like I just had all these issues with this new ad account that I made. And I was like, okay, well, I could try to fix this, or I could make another ad account. And I was just getting frustrated. And I said, you know what? I'm on X all the time, formerly known as Twitter. And I was like, I know that there's X ads. I know people have kind of talked about this. I've heard whispers here and there about X ads, and I've seen companies doing it, and like all random different types of companies. And so I started just paying attention. I started looking at which companies were running ads. And, there was this one company, I remember it was like Rachel's Texas Kitchen, and they were selling canned peaches and beets and all kinds of fruits and vegetables. And their ads would have 8 million, 10 million impressions on them. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. I started asking around. I said, has anyone run X ads before? And everyone's like, no, they don't work. They don't work. They don't work. And I was like, what do you mean they don't work? I see all these companies. Some of these companies have 55 million impressions on an ad. And you could see these things because it shows the impression number and the likes and retweets and all that. So I was like, I think there's something here, but there was no information on it. So I said, let me try this myself. And so I started running my own campaigns on X for some of my own stuff, my own programs. And I remember I put out like an offer to get clients for my client services that I do. And I spent like $1,000 and I got 9 leads from it. And they turned out to be really good leads. And I closed one of them, and I was like, all right, they definitely work. like you take an advertisement, if it's a good offer and you put it in front of the right people, it doesn't really matter what platform that's on, whether it's Google or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. It's just good fundamental advertising. And it was funny though, because every person that I talked to, everyone out there was like, don't even waste your money. It's like lighting money on fire. The algorithm sucks. The ad manager sucks. Everything they said, it all sucked. And I said, well, I don't know if that's true. Let me find out. And I just started seeing more and more companies do it, and really successful direct response companies are doing it. And even, there's obviously a lot of the bigger Fortune 500 level, like McDonald's is always advertising there.
DraftKings is on there. It's like
DraftKings, yeah. Like some of those where like I don't necessarily know if like they're living and dying by their performance metrics. Sometimes it's just like, hey, we have this amount of budget, we want to be on every channel. I'm not saying that's true of those companies in particular, but sometimes with the bigger brands, it tends to happen. But I noticed there were a lot of those, but then there were also some of these smaller, like gritty, just direct response businesses who I knew that they weren't going to be running ads if they weren't successful. So I just started doing it more and more. And then I had some friends who had businesses and they were looking to get onto the platform. Like I had one buddy of mine who I met on X, and he has a company, e-commerce brand, and they were spending 500K a month on Facebook. And he was like, dude, we've hit the ceiling. Like no matter what we do, we can't push past 500K a month. So we need to diversify. So they were looking at X and they were able to get sales, with some very basic campaigns. And this was still while everyone was saying, don't even waste your time. It doesn't work. There was the advertiser boycott, everything else. And I was looking at the costs comparatively speaking. I mean, not that CPMs are necessarily the most important thing, but I had campaigns running where we had 79-cent CPMs. I mean, I have clients where we're spending less than that. I had one client where we're spending 4 cents a CPM. It's like, where are you going to get that? On Facebook, you might have 20, 30, $40 CPMs, depending on what industry you're in. The clicks were cheaper. Like everything was just so cheap. And I think part of that was and I think it's still true now. There was this vacuum where a lot of bigger advertisers, a lot of big advertising money pulled out, but the platform was still there and the people were still there, right? I mean, there's 90 or so million people in the US who are X users. So I was like, there's definitely something here. And I started working with clients and helping them with their X ads. Clients who had tried to advertise on the platform before, they didn't really know what they were doing. They were lighting money on fire. And we were able to find success with a bunch of these just by, tinkering with the platform, trying a lot of different things, and kind of figured out a formula that works there.
Yeah, I think it's I think you hit on it. I see this a lot. I'll do the somewhat left to center analogy is I have people on Amazon, just on, we'll think, content, copy as a whole, and they'll spend, hours and hours per ASIN optimizing it for the Amazon algorithm. And then they'll get done, it'll be performing, and then they'll launch on Walmart, and they'll take that exact same copy and they'll drop it on Walmart, and then it won't perform. And they're like, hey, Walmart platform doesn't work. And when you talk about the people who really know, the Walmart marketplace, they're like, yeah, you have to optimize the content for the Walmart marketplace. You can't just take your Amazon content and drop it on there. It doesn't perform the same. And so that's kind of what I'm hearing is, people want it to be, as easy as Meta, right? And they want to be able to take exactly what they have and just switch on another platform and have it roll. And what you're saying is, I mean, you can do that, but you are just wasting money in a lot of cases, right? Is it like, how much work is it to optimize an ad?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely different platforms. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've definitely, for a lot of these clients, we've taken creative that's been winning on Meta and Instagram, and we've used it. But a lot of times the copy for the ads itself is very different just because you have a 280 character limit. If you're including a link in there, then that's even less. So there's definitely a lot of nuance in terms of how you want to write the copy. The creative formats that work, I wish there was a standard, for every brand, it's a little bit different. And usually we just kind of test out a lot of different frameworks, and then see which ones are. Some brands, the statics absolutely crush and work really well. Sometimes the video ads work better. There's even things you could do if you're running an engagement campaign where you're doing threads or more content-based pieces. So there's a lot of different stuff that can work. So there definitely is some nuance. The similarities to Meta, like obviously you can use the similar type of creative, but the ads manager itself, it has broad targeting capabilities where it'll use machine learning just like Meta does to kind of scan the ads, dial it in, show to who they think the right kind of people are. But the cool thing about X is that you have a lot more control in targeting and the breakdowns of the targeting parameters that you set. You can see every single handle that you target. You can see all the keywords you target. You could see the performance of all these individual targeting parameters, which is really nice, which I think is a little bit of an advantage. You have more control. So it's almost like if you took like Google PPC and Meta's broad targeting and kind of mixed them together and you got the best of both worlds. That's really what the way that I look at the X ads platform. And it's just getting better and better every day. Like they probably about, I want to say around a year and a half ago, give or take, they introduced event pixels. So you could optimize for conversion, which was something in previous years they didn't have. Before it was just like, hey, show this ad to these people and hopefully it works. And now you can actually optimize for conversions and return on ad spend, which is nice. So they've been really hard at work, just making it a much better platform. And I think it's a lot easier to use than Meta and Google. I like it's just less buttons to push. It's a little bit simpler in that regard. You don't get lost in there, but it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice in that regard. And it just really just comes down to your offers, your creative, your copy, and your targeting parameters and your account setup. And if you nail those 5 things, it'd be good to go.
Yeah. So do you come in like alongside of a traditional paid search and social agency? It's just kind of like then a bolt on because I mean, I talk to the traditional agencies all the time and, X isn't something they're putting out there. I don't think it's something they're opposed to, but they would rather, bring in somebody like you alongside them and execute it. Is that how it's happening or is it completely separate? Or do you have like a whole traditional paid search and social arm as well?
Yeah, I mean, we do done for you for some clients, and some just want consulting because maybe they have an agency or they have an internal team. Sometimes that's the case, and they want to be trained up on it. So it really just depends client to client. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different ways we do it. But it's just like it's learning to. There's a lot of things that people do wrong when like I've gotten into accounts and they're paying $18 a click or they're paying $20 a CPM, and like I see those things immediately, or they're like, hey, we spent $2,000 and had nothing to show for it, and then I go in, retool everything, and we start with $100 a day, and all of a sudden they're seeing conversions and positive things happen. Um, a lot of people just don't know how to structure things properly. They don't know how many creative assets they're using, and they don't know what kind of copy they can use that's actually going to attract the attention of the users on the platform. I mean, there's that, like, obviously it's a large amount of people, but what I always say is like it's a different pocket of people. So it's not that these people don't have other social platforms. Like I have a Facebook account, I have an Instagram account. I probably spend 10 minutes a week on those, but I'll spend hours every day on X, just because that's the social platform that I like to hop onto. So for a lot of people, what they tend to see is that they're first time visitors or first time customers, they're just tapping into, like, it skyrockets because they're tapping into a whole segment of people who are on social, but they're not on really spending any time on LinkedIn or any of these other, or YouTube, even any of these other platforms. It's like that their platform of choice is X. So it's almost like a blue ocean in that regard where you're going to tap into so many people who are never even seeing your Facebook ads or never even seeing your Instagram ads. So for a lot of people, it just depends. Some people want it for channel diversity. They're just so dependent on one channel. They're worried, what if Google shuts our account down, which sometimes happens for any reason or for no reason at all sometimes.
No,
Same
sure.
thing with Facebook. These things happen. I was talking to a guy one time. He had a business selling like infant clothing, and he got shut down from Google with no explanation and no ability for recourse, right? So it's just reducing some of that single channel dependency. The performance kind of varies for certain brands. For certain brands, we actually get better customer acquisition costs on X than we do on Meta. So I can't say that that's going to be a guarantee for everyone, of course, obviously, but other brands also, they might just have different demographics or psychographics that they're going after who are more native to X than to other platforms. Um, Obviously, if you're going for, if you have a Gen Z market, you're probably going to spend more time on TikTok. If you have more of a boomer market, you're probably going to allocate more spend to Facebook, maybe even to Instagram or even to Google. If you have more of a millennial audience, you might find your people are on X. I'm not saying those are the only people there, but depending on what you sell, you actually might be missing out on a great source of traffic that's super cheap. I don't know if it's going to be cheap forever, but it's cheap right now. That could change in 6 months, 12 months. It could change in 6 years. I mean, all I know is that right now there is a good opportunity, given the costs and given the reach that you can get, for a very small amount of money compared to what you're spending on other platforms, because there's not as many advertisers there, which is nice. Some brands, we come in and they have zero competitors on the platform, but they advertise on Meta and there's 20 other brands selling the same thing and they're trying to compete with them.
Hmm. No, I love it. It reminds me back of the day when Amazon was launching their PPC campaigns, and it's 4, 5, 6, 7 cents a click, right? It was unbelievable. And obviously, you fast forward 5 years from the time they launch it, and now all of a sudden you're at into the dollars per click. It's just one of those platforms that I think a lot of people just haven't paid attention to. It just doesn't come up in conversation. All I do is talk to brands all day, every day, and rarely does it ever pop up. Where I guess a couple things is, are there like, is if people jump in, like, are there like number one pitfalls that you see either launching, or maybe you jump in with a brand and you take a look at it, and like the number one thing that you always catch them doing wrong, whether it's bid strategy or content strategy? Would love to hear any of that.
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot, and I'm not sure why this is exactly, but sometimes I'll take under I'll talk to a potential client or a new client. I'll take a peek under the hood of what they're doing, and I'm like, how are you targeting? And they're like, oh, we're running some follower lookalike campaigns, and I'll go in, and I'll be targeting 4 people, and I'm like, well, that's not enough. Even if it's a lot of people, even if those accounts have individual followers, what you want to do is basically pick anywhere from 50 to 75 follower lookalikes. And even as I'm doing some consulting, sometimes I'll go through and I'll say, okay, like who are the people who might have your customers? And we'll start looking at individual handles, and I'll say, what about this person? What about this person? What about this brand? What about this brand? They say, oh, well, we don't like them. I'm like, I don't care if you don't like them. That's okay if you don't like that person. Do they have your customers? Right. And sometimes I think that clouds people's judgment. Right. So just because you don't necessarily like the person, or they don't see, their philosophy slightly different than yours, that's okay. We can go take their customer. We can turn their followers into your customers. That's okay to do. Right. And so
Yeah, it's that classic really quickly. It's like, do you want to be engaged in that conversation to have it with them, or no? Right. I mean, that's how I look at these, these platforms as a whole. Do you want to engage in that conversation? Or no, like you said, like go take their followers, make them your customers, and then you can have a conversation with them.
I mean, they're waiting. They're not seeing ads from that person they're following, but they can see your ads. And so oftentimes it's just they're not going broad enough, which is kind of interesting. Sometimes people have the opposite problem, but most of the people that I've looked at, they're just not going broad enough with the targeting. They're not using optimized targeting, which is the AI feature, which finds more people who. What you do is you set an initial set of targeting parameters. You usually use keywords and follower lookalikes. For certain clients, you can use the interest categories, but really I just live with keywords and follower lookalikes, and that plus optimized targeting usually leads to a pretty good result for most people. And then it's just the amount of creative that they're testing, the types of creative that they're testing. It's the copy that they're using. The copy itself in the ads, what's cool about X is you have an opportunity to get earned media impressions. And I've seen this with some of my clients where sometimes you can write an ad that doesn't necessarily look like an ad. It just looks like a regular Twitter post. I've done this in the political space for some political advertising clients that I've worked for, where we'll write something that has obviously a very biased political message. And when people see that, they'll either agree with it or disagree with it. And sometimes people will disagree with it and they'll say, hey, screw you, right? And they'll reply back, or they'll quote tweet them and say bad things about the person. Obviously, in the political space, that's kind of par for the course. That's what it is. It's always 50-50, right? Half the people who see any political message are going to hate it. The other half are going to love it. But what's cool about that is it's earned media impressions that you didn't pay for, because every time someone retweets an ad or quote tweets an ad or tags someone or replies or whatever it is, you get free impressions. I don't really think that happens. It doesn't happen on Google. It doesn't happen on YouTube. It can happen on Facebook, a little bit Instagram. I don't really think there's a way to necessarily do that. I mean, sometimes people repost ads, but people repost ads and engage with them all the time on X. And that's why, that client with the 4 cent CPMs, that's why we're getting tens of millions of impressions that we did not pay for. And we're able to run profitable campaigns with an average order value of $4.99, which we wouldn't be able to do on Meta. Like we could not make the costs work on any other advertising platforms with an AOV that low. But because of the sheer amount of, with that client that I'm mentioning in particular, we have gotten about 350 million impressions spending less than $20,000. And I'm not saying every company is going to be able to do that. This is a client in the political space. So, on X especially, that's where those kind of things tend to live. But even with some of my e-commerce brands that are really not political at all, they're just kind of selling straight up regular physical products, consumables, food products, whatever it is. We're able to write ads in a way that are going to get earned media impressions that you don't have to pay for, which is a really nice feature of the ecosystem, because when you're scanning through X, half the time you don't even realize the post that you're seeing is an ad unless you look up in the corner and you see the little ad symbol right there. A lot of them, you can make them look like ordinary posts, and people will engage with them as if they are ordinary posts.
Yeah. I love it. Is there like a budget to get started? That's the next thing, right? And then what does getting started look like? The other thing is, like, how do people find you, I guess, is the way as well. like, I think a lot of people would pay money to get started on the platform, to have you set things up, right? It's like anything out. It's like you're coming in basically as the like open AI, right? That's why people love Chat GPT. It gets them 90% of the way there, and we can take it from here. Right.
Yeah.
But give me 90%. So the burden to lift and get off the ground isn't so hard.
I mean, it really depends. We have clients. I've talked to clients who want to spend 12,000 a day right out of the gate, and then I've talked to clients who want to start at $100 a day. It just depends. I mean, it depends on inventory. It depends on how much budget you want to allocate there. But you could scale pretty high. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's I talk to the XAD team all the time, and they have brands spending $30,000 a day profitably. So it's a pretty high ceiling. Sometimes people have that fear of like, oh, like how high can we push it? And I think you can push it pretty high. But it really just depends. I mean, a lot of times with clients, if they have a small budget or they're a smaller business, so we'll say, let's start with $100 a day. Obviously, if you could start with two, 300 a day, it depends on what your cost per acquisition is. If it's an e-commerce brand, for instance, and you're paying 30, 40, $50 for an acquisition, you could start with 100, 200, $300 a day and start there and then start scaling it up. The cool thing about the campaigns that we've noticed is that the longer they run, the smarter they get. We've actually seen even as we've been scaling budget, we've seen costs drop, which doesn't always happen on other platforms. Usually the opposite happens. Usually you start hitting a ceiling, and then in order to continue to acquire customers, you have to push out into colder buckets of inventory who might not be as responsive. And then it gets more and more expensive. And that's where you hit those plateaus and those ceilings that you can't break through. We have not found that to be the case so far with X's platform, at least just anecdotally with my experience. We've actually found that the longer you let that machine learning gather data, the better it actually gets, even as you're scaling the spend. So it's pretty cool in that regard. But yeah, I mean, you could start low. You could start with a couple $100 a day and scale it up from there. And we've done that with clients.
Yeah, why not? I guess. This is great. I mean, I think a lot of people had the same reaction I did. Was like, duh, why not? Why aren't more people using it? Then how do people get like a hold of you if they want to reach out and get this set up?
Yeah, so my agency site is westegg.agency. There's a little application form there. You can just fill it out. I'll get in contact with you, ask you a few questions about, goals, budget, products, all those kind of things. But what I always tell people is, if you think your customers are there, they probably are. If certain brands, they just have certain types of people that they're going after who might be living on X more. But even if you're not sure, we could always have a chat, and I could say, based on what I've seen, I think your people might be here. We could run an audience test and see what the the list size would be of certain people in the market. But it's a pretty cool place. It's a pretty cool time. Like, I don't know if it's going to be like this forever, and it's not like an urgency thing. It's just all these, I remember back when I was starting as a copywriter, I remember running campaigns and getting clicks for 5 cents. And I was stupid for not dumping all of my money into those campaigns early on. But I think that there is a bit of I'm not going to say it's the same thing as Facebook in 2015. I wouldn't go that far. But there definitely are some similarities in terms of the timing. And I think eventually it will become, just this past week, a bunch of big advertisers just said that they're going to resume advertising on X. I don't think that's going to have, it's not like the opportunity is over or something for new brands to get in, but it still is very early in the X ads life cycle. And I think we're still in that early adopter phase. Even though the platform's been around for a while, I feel like we're still in that early adopter phase where there's so many people who just, you're right, they don't even think about it because everyone talks about Facebook and Google. And granted, they are bigger ecosystems, right? I mean, Facebook has 2.6 billion people. X has about 600 million, give or take. So it's bigger. But again, what I always tell people is, how many customers do you need, right? Like, you're telling me you can't make it work with 600 million people. Like, I think you could probably make it work. I'm not saying you can necessarily scale as high as Facebook or Google, if you're spending 10 million bucks a month or more, or whatever the case might be. But you'd be surprised with the mileage you can get out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been picking your brain for a while. Like, any questions for me?
I'm not sure. I probably
always like
to
after I get done picking people's brains forever, I'm like, hey, I should probably be nice here and just let them throw any questions my way. I mean, I'm most always shocked when there's new things like this popping up that aren't new per se.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, And I think, as a brand now, where everybody's at, where, profitability wise, right? And you can get a massive amount of impressions, brand awareness, and conversion for a very low price. I don't know how you don't take a look at this platform. At least try it out. I mean, we're talking a couple $100 here, right? A couple $100,
Yeah.
and you can test and learn pretty quick, and then just scale it from there. That's it. I mean, are there like brands that this doesn't work for? Like maybe it's in the CPG space. Um, I don't know.
Excuse me. We made it work for digital products. We made it work for services. We made it work for e-com. Software it works for. Certain companies that have a super small total addressable market. We worked with a company one time where they have 2,000 total customers, potential customers worldwide that they could acquire, and we actually got them, booked appointments and demos and things for their software. But the total addressable market was just so small. It was just such a niche company that even though they were finding success, it wasn't something they were going to be able to push out, and get significant scale with. So they decided to not continue. But if you're super niche like that, if you're like, you have 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 total customers worldwide, it might not be for you. But if you have anything that's mass market or semi-mass market, where you can handle tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of customers, a lot of clients come to me in the e-commerce space just because those companies tend to advertise more so than most other companies because that's how they live or die. But it really just depends. I mean, your people are there. That's the cool thing about X. There's so many different types of people there. There's so many different little niche groups and subgroups and, little pockets of the platform. And sometimes your ads break out. You know what I mean? Sometimes your ads will get that earned media, which is the most fun thing in the world when you look and you're like, wow, like look at all these people we didn't have to pay for and they're buying. It's kind of fun.
What are you like the most excited about for like the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months as a whole?
I think that they're really working hard on some of these integrations. They're really going hard after Shopify. Some of those companies, they've announced some new integrations. I know that this is going to happen at some point. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, so take this with a grain of salt. But I know Elon has talked about X payments becoming a thing. Now I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, he's dropped little breadcrumbs here and there. Who knows? But if I had to guess, what I think would make the most sense is if they wanted you to be able to do payments through X, I would imagine that if you're then a company and you're advertising on X and you're putting an ad in front of a customer and they want to buy and they have their payment stuff hooked up, they might be able to buy with a click of a button. Now, I think that would make the most sense. I don't know if that's exactly what they have planned, but I would have to imagine if this X payments feature becomes an integral part of the platform, I can't see how that would be a bad thing. I can only see upside from the advertising potential. And I think if that were to happen, imagine if you were able to one-click checkout on the Facebook ad. Like, I think that is what the direction they might go in. I can't say for certain. Again, I don't know inside the company what they've discussed, but based on the hints that they've dropped, it seems like that is a natural next step if they are trying to make it the everything platform. So we'll see. I mean, it's getting, the platform is growing. It's getting more popular. People are leaving, sure, but people are always leaving platform. I mean, I left Facebook a long time ago, right? I don't really go on there. But there's a lot of growth, a lot of exciting things. They're adding more video components. They're developing the integrations. There's more of these Shopify integrations. I think they're just trying to make it more accessible for everyone. And right now, too, they're offering like tons of ad credits. Like you can get a large amount. I think for Shopify sellers up to like $100,000 in ad credit matches, which is, excuse me, pretty insane. So it's basically spend $1, get $1 up to 100K. I mean, there's some stipulations on that, and I don't know if they'll be doing that forever, depending on when you're watching this here at home. But they're really just making a good concerted effort, and we're just taking advantage of it.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if they can do an ad match and you can double your return on ad spend, essentially, right? If they're going to do a match, you're getting twice as much for the same price. You're going to, as long as you're targeting correctly, you're going to double your ROAS. It's crazy. I just think I think we're at a point in time when the conversations are around profitability, when the conversations are around performance, and when you get to the end of the year, you need to be able to say, "Hey, we tried everything,"
Mm-hmm.
and here's at the end of the day. It just so happens, there's fewer people spending less money or whatever. If you're going to justify why stuff is down year over year, I guess if you're massively growing, it's a little bit of a different story. But a lot of brands aren't in that position right now. They're in this position of, hey, I need growth. I need additional customers. I have a lot of people looking outside the US right now as, the total number of people in the US spending money is down. Like, oh, well, let's just go international. Let's hit a Amazon EU market or the EU market as a whole. Are there new trends that are popping up that people should be aware of?
Um, Trends in the ad. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't really noticed anything. I mean, we just focus a lot on the fundamentals.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that there might be specific things you do at a very high spend level in terms of account structure, things like that. But for most people, we just do really good, really efficient, cold
Yeah.
customer,
Keep it simple, right?
acquisition campaigns. And I mean, there's like I said, they've upgraded their audience features too, where you can do lookalikes and you could upload custom audiences. There's a lot of some new AI tools coming out in terms of building audiences that can work well. But even just with the optimized targeting, like they can find your customer. They have enough data. I mean, the thing is, some people post so much and read and engage with so much, and like, if someone mentions the word bicycle and you sell bicycles, you could target all the people who tweeted about bicycles or liked a post or commented on a post about bicycles. Like, it's very cool in that regard. Like you could just laser target, like sniper shot people with the right kind of ads at the right time in their life.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's a lot. You have a lot of control over it, and there's a lot of things that you could test. But if you have good offers, it's and that's the thing too. Like I noticed even before I got into the X ad stuff, I was like, I buy stuff from X all the time. I see a person I like, they recommend a product, I go on and buy it, and I'm like, why wouldn't that work as an ad? And it turns out it does. It's this advertising thing works. Who would have
Yeah.
thought?
Go
It's
figure.
crazy. It's funny.
uh, Chris, thanks so much for your time today. Chris Orzechowski, everybody, check out westegg.agency. They're just doing some really cool stuff in the XAD space. Worth reaching out and just probably setting up some time if this is a space you're interested in. But again, Chris, thanks so much for your time today. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.